As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing life facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self-doubt in order to regain self-confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experiences, and trauma. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Lisa Petty. She started her career as a holistic nutritionist and health researcher, and quickly became recognized as a speaker, journalist, award-winning author, and media health expert. After several years coaching women who struggle to follow through on their health goals, Lisa earned a PhD for her research on how midlife women experience self-care and well-being despite the social pressures to be perfect in every facet of their lives. Her new book, Forget About Having It All, The Midlife Women's Guide to Creating the Life You Want, is a combination of research findings and Lisa's own story of midlife self-discovery. Through a combination of research and woo, Lisa now helps midlife women figure out who they are now and create the life that they really want. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm so excited what we're going to discuss because I feel that it is a very pertinent trauma per se that we don't think about and that it actually happens. So we're going to speak about empty nesters, but I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and how your struggle or you notice your struggle began.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about the things that sort of get in the way of women taking care of themselves. And as you and I spoke about off air, we talk, when we think about motherhood, we think about newborns and toddlers and all of that. And, you know, you're a mother as long as those beings are walking the earth. And so we always need some kind of support and community around motherhood. So I love this opportunity to chat with you. So as you mentioned, when you were reading my very formal bio there, I started as a holistic nutritionist, and I discovered that, you know, I worked always exclusively with women because I know women, right? They don't have to explain themselves too much to me. And I noticed that as we got older, the women aging along with me, that the women who are coming to see me weren't following through on some of those self-care things that they said that they wanted to do. So let's say, for example, they came to me because they wanted to release weight. And a good example I like to use is we agreed that they would drink more water.
Mm-hmm.
So they go off saying they're going to drink more water, and they would come back the next time. And I'd say, so how'd you do with the drinking more water? And they'd say, yeah, I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's try that again. Can we put it back on the agenda? And they'd come back again next time and say, so how did you do with that? And they'd say, yeah, I didn't do it. So this was happening in my professional life, this idea of, maybe I have some skills gaps. Maybe there's more I need to learn. Clearly, I'm not supporting these women. They're not doing the thing. Whatever the thing is, they're not doing it. So what else do I have to learn? So this is happening on my professional front. And then on my private front, I'm a mom of two.
Mm-hmm.
And my baby was starting to look at university pamphlets. So I could see an empty nest in my future. And the panic hit me. Like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Just me in these four walls, all by my lonesome. What is that? Like, I can't even express to you now what that feeling was like. Just like this sense of everything's going to change for me. Everything's going to change. So I ended up going back to university, got a master's degree, and then a doctorate because the research bug bit. And my doctorate focused on the relationship that women at midlife have between self-care and well-being, and what gets in the way of women taking care of themselves. And interestingly, one of the things, the most predominant thing that gets in the way of women taking care of themselves, is the social expectations that everybody has on us about how we're supposed to act, what we're supposed to want, what we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in reference to motherhood, there's the sense of, the role that you're supposed to play, the traits that you're supposed to bring into the world, that you're supposed to be kind and generous and self-sacrificing and nurturing and all of those things. Which, by the way, any moms out there, is like, there's a whole bunch of traits that aren't in there, including resourcefulness, impatience, frustration,
Mm-hmm.
all of those very, very human things that happen as well. But once you get to midlife, once your kids are a little bit older, and yay, like, they're independent now, they don't need you as much, they're starting to pull away. When we have been programmed and conditioned as women to make that such an important aspect of our identity, when we start to unravel that, it can be paralyzing, it can be numbing, it can trigger fear, it can trigger, looking towards the future and not knowing what's out there. And in our culture, where I love podcasts like yours because we talk about the tough stuff here. Women are notorious story keepers, meaning we don't talk about the tough stuff, right? That's why when we get to perimenopause and menopause, we don't know what's happening to us, because nobody's ever talked about us about it. Our moms didn't, our grandparents didn't. When we get to the point of kids leaving home, we didn't have those conversations with our parents. We're starting to have those conversations amongst ourselves, but there's a lot of story keeping that's still going on, which clearly isn't very healthy and certainly not helpful. And, sort of speaking to your purpose with this podcast here, the more conversations like this we have, the more that we can model this behavior to
Correct.
our children. And I don't just mean our daughters, our sons as well. And the community outside of ourselves, the healthier we're all going to be.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm so grateful that you're here because, like I mentioned earlier before introducing you, the importance of, we talked about even before getting on the podcast, the identity shift.
Yes.
And I would love you to delve into that more, what your experience was. I know I have my own clients that I've worked with them through their identity shift. And actually, I feel it's a blessing. You did your part as a mother, but it's that time now, is how I see it and feel it, is your time to really become who you are. So can you tell me your experience in that and how you help your clients?
Yes. So as I mentioned, I went off to university. I toddled off to university because I know one thing about myself, and that, for one thing, I'm incredibly curious. My daughter used to call me nosy, but I'm incredibly curious. And I love to know, I love to learn. And I got so much of my identity is wrapped up in thinking, right? Being intelligent, using my brain, being logical, which, by the way, is part of that social programming. If you think back to and sort of the inspiration for my book title, the concept of having it all that we were bred with as young women. Go out, have it all, have an amazing career, have a family, have your big house and your 2 cars, and have it all. No one told us that having it all means doing it all, but that's in a conversation for another day. Part of that, going out into the world and functioning in what used to be the man's domain, was that masculine traits were the ones that were focused on, were the ones that were lauded, were the ones that were encouraged. And, raise your hand if you're at home or not along with me, if you were told, stop being so emotional. You have to be logical. And when we do that, we're stuck in our brains, and brains are amazing. Like, I have a doctorate. Like, Trust me, I'm grateful to have my brain, but our brains are meant to be checking the work, right? Not doing all of the problem solving. And so even that idea of stopping emotional takes women out of their power, right? Because our power really comes from embodiment and really comes with connecting to our intuition. And this does all wrap and connect with identity. So as you know, as me, as a thinky in my brain, what do I do? The first thing I do is run off to university, right? I'm like, oh, if I just go get
Right.
more education, if I just go get more credentials, um, then I'm defining myself outside of this role of mother because, I was a single mom for well, I still am, but I was a single mom since my youngest was 3. And I made a lot of decisions that framed my experience as a young mother and a mother of young children based on the fact that being a mother was my prime identity and that I really wanted to do a good job at that. And, to bring in some private information about me, that comes from the fact that I was adopted. And so the children that I raised came from my body, and my experience of having those children where they were my first blood connection to the earth, right?
Right.
So it was a really, really significant, personal, and important part of my identity to be a good mother. So when I see that going away, and again, yay me, right? I raised them. I had one in grad school, and my baby was heading off to university. The first thing I did was went to my safe spot, which was my brain. Let's go to my brain. And so I did, as I said. And, life happened after that. I'm so grateful that I have the doctorate and everything, but it didn't solve my problems. It didn't solve who I am now. So now I'm Lisa with a degree. Okay. Now I'm Dr. Lisa. Yay me.
Right.
That doesn't solve who I am. Who is Lisa? Who is Lisa at my very core? Who am I? Because if I don't know who I am outside of being a mother, doctor, sister, friend, if I don't know who I am outside of all of those social roles that we play, how can I possibly figure out why I'm here?
Right.
Yes, I was here to raise those amazing kids of mine, but I'm still here. And I have, God willing, decades ahead of me. And so why am I here now? What is my next thing that I want to pour as much passion into as I did motherhood? Because I have a goal. I want to crack 100, right? I want to crack 100. So, so I went down this path of, okay, first do the grad school. And I'm like, I still don't know who I am. So I was able to use what I learned from my research, again, going into these social roles and understanding the importance of peeling all of those away, because that's part of the challenge. We have to peel those away. And we need to get to a place where we are able to be with ourselves, just ourselves, quietly with ourselves, and come to an awareness of the truth of who we are. I mean, it sounds like a big jump, but it's not that difficult if you just peel back some of those layers. You detangle from those social expectations that say this is what you should be doing, this is how you should be acting, this is the language you should be using, this is the energy that you should have, right? That dastardly should. If we peel back all of that social conditioning, what is left is the truth of who you are.
Right.
And if you can look back, for women are going, yeah, that sounds really out there and woo. Okay, fair. You did say that I use the woo, and I do use the woo. And by the way, all the woo that I use it's research backed, right? There's research evidence for a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, but also it is an embodied wisdom that I have come to know through my own work as well. So we get to that quiet space of taking off all of these social roles, like taking off blankets and sitting quietly. And one of the things that you can do is think back to when you were 5. Who were you when you were 5? When you were just being 5-year-old you. And you didn't have all those social expectations on you. Who were you? And what made your heart sing, right? Because there's probably seeds there. There's probably threads that you can start to pull about who you are as an embodied being. And who you are isn't your name in it, isn't again, the roles that you play. It's what do you bring to the world? What lights you up? And these, going back to what felt like a tangent perhaps before, this idea of being logical and being encouraged and conditioned to be logical. If we get into that space of, well, who am I? It's all about emotion. It's all about feelings. And it's all about connecting with our bodies, not our heads. And as a thinky thinker, let me tell you, that was a huge, huge hurdle for me to jump.
Right. I can imagine. So what made you have, from going back to school, getting your PhD, your degree, being in that logical thinker, masculine energy, what choice did you have to make to now venture into what you said about, being in the feminine side of you, which is your power? What event, situation, or change within you that you made that choice to really look into that side, because that is where our power is?
Yes. So this is a funny story. So I'll go back 10 years in time when I started to get a sense of this idea that I wasn't manifesting what I wanted in my life because of my energy. And it was one of those things that was in my head. I was like, oh, yes, that's a logical conclusion because I've done all the things. I've ticked all the boxes. Yes, logically, the only thing that hasn't shifted is my energy. For 10 years, that was in my head.
Okay.
All right. This is how we can get trapped in our brains and in our thinking. And so fast forward 10 years, and I was starting to realize, okay, I had to get it to move out of here and into here. I had to learn how to, and this sounds so bizarre to me, that as natural beings connected to all that is, that I had to learn how to be. Like, it is so conditioned out of us to be human beings rather than human doings. But anyway, I set myself on this path of, okay, well, how do I be? And how do I shift energetically? And so anyway, I restarted a journaling practice that I had stopped while I was going through of writing one more thing while I was a graduate student. Was just too much for me. But what happened to me was I graduated with my degree and I moved into corporate. I thought, I'm going to try corporate. I have never done this before. When I was really young, but I had worked independently as a holistic nutritionist for so long. Then I went to school. Then I came out and I thought, oh, I'll give corporate a try. Well, talk about square peg in a round hole.
Right.
I didn't fit. I didn't belong. My ideas were too out there for the corporate environment, and I was too autonomous and independent, and that's not what works in the corporate structure, right? Everybody's meant to play their role. I didn't fit. So I had come to the realization that it wasn't for me, but I wasn't ready to shift out of it because I didn't know what my next step was going to be. So I was playing this game, let's call it roulette, of doing the work that I was hired to do, but having my eye out, right? Trying like, okay, what? And having these conversations. I use the word God, but whatever works for your listeners, whether it's source or energy or spirit or divine power, whatever works. I firmly believe that, as I said before, we are all connected to this greater power. And when I journal, I'm actually in conversation with God. I call it's like when I journal, it's my prayer, right?
Yeah.
And for someone who is a thinky thinker like me, I can't meditate because whoa, like no. And I accept that about myself. I can do walking meditations and that sort of thing. But when I start to journal, that is when I can really start to co-create, right? And really connect with my own inner wisdom. So one day I was writing in my journal. Actually, I was scream journaling. I was so angry with God that I didn't have a sense of who I was supposed to be now. Right? Like, come on, I should have this figured out. I'd figured out a few things. I knew what some of my gifts were. I'm intelligent. I have all of this information. I want to work with women. I want to serve women. And there was not this clarity. Well, boom, here's what you're supposed to do. Sweetie, go off and do that. And so I was angry and I was yelling at God with my pen, saying, come on, like, give me a sign. Give me a really signy sign, like make it really, really clear
so
what
my
I'm supposed to.
thinky brain can get it.
Yes. Make it something that I will recognize and understand because God, you know what you're dealing with here. And I said, because I know how the universe works, I also said, but it doesn't have to be dramatic. Okay. Like it doesn't have to be earth shattering or whatever. Just make it clear, soft and clear. Well, a couple of hours later, I was let go from my job.
That happens many, many times. I have heard, oh my gosh, countless stories of this happening.
Yeah, it was wild. And I bet the poor woman from HR never had an experience like she had with me because the second she said, we have to let you go, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, this is the funniest thing. Like, what a sense of humor. What a sense of humor you have, God, that you're doing this to me today. And then in my head, I'm like, I said not dramatic. I said not dramatic. Anyway, so that happened. I got off the call. The first reaction after getting off the call was like fear, like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? What plan am I going to make? Where am I going to go? Who am I going to talk to? And then I was just like, no, don't do that again. Don't get in your head again. Let's use this opportunity to, as you said, reframe. I have all of this time ahead of me. I'm going to make space and just be. And so I set a time limit for myself. And I was like, okay, for 2 weeks, I am not allowed to think about this. And every time it popped into my head, yeah, but what are you going to do? I would garden. I would go sit by the water. I would go for a walk. I would journal. I would read fiction. I would do anything to not let my brain try and solve the problem. And
that's a task.
Initially it was really challenging, but then a couple of days in, I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't so hard. The thought comes in and I go, okay, I see you. I'm not dealing with you right now. And I went and did something else. It's not that hard, but nobody tells you how to do that. I mean, for years I'd had coaches and mentors saying, oh, Lisa, you think too much. You've just got to let go. And I'm like, yeah, but how? You can't tell someone who thinks too much just to let go and not tell them how. Because they need the how. That's how their brain works. So I figured out for me what letting go meant, what the how meant. And anyway, so I gave myself the 2 weeks. And then one day I said, okay, what am I good at? And it came to me like that. You're a really good writer. You need to write a book. And so I did.
That is so lovely. Now, this happened after your children were already in college or university?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
This is, the story of my son looking at the pamphlets, that was before he started university. And since then I had finished my doctorate. So my children, my son's almost done university, and my daughter is in practice with her work. So my kids are fully fledged adults at this point. Yes. So I had a lot of space. I mean, that's a really good point. I did have space to do this work on myself by myself.
Yes, and
Right?
that's where I find it's a gift of the empty nesting, right?
Yes.
Because how can you really be there for yourself when we're so busy being moms and, catering to them, and they need this and they need that, that we are expensing actually ourselves for them. But the moment that you get the opportunity to really find who you are, I mean, that is a gift in itself, because I feel like moms that have evolved through their mommyhood with their kids, that they lose their identity.
Yes.
I just had this conversation with someone else. It's because at that time in their life, that was priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did. And what a wonderful job, right? But then you get the opportunity to see the empty nesting as an opportunity to dive deeper within, and then really honor yourself of the momhood that you did. But now really, like you said, for yourself, what am I really good at?
Yes. Yes.
But
And what
what
makes
can
my
I do?
heart sing, right? I mean, in my coaching practice, I talk a lot about finding your North Star, and we don't need to get into that today, but it's not just about the doing, right? The writing was a way for me to share my wisdom, which is who I am. And that's what I got to learn through writing this book. I've written books before, but this one was really personal, because through writing this book, I learned that I am a channel for wisdom. And what that means is that really smart stuff comes out of my mouth that has nothing to do with me. That's what
Oh,
that
say that
means.
again.
Really smart stuff comes out of my mouth that has nothing to do with me. It's not
Oh,
about me thinking,
yes, right.
right? When I'm talking about statistics and I'm telling you about theories, yes, that's the stuff I learned. But the wisdom that comes from my mouth comes directly from the source, God, the universe, and to understand that that's truly my gift to the world. And then how I do it, the doing stuff kicking in with the writing, speaking, and being on your podcast and coaching women. That's just the way that I do what I am, which is a
Right.
channel for wisdom and love and connection. Because ultimately, my goal. I don't know if you've heard this. Gloria Steinem once said that she has a vision that someday an army of gray-haired women are going to take over the world. And my take on that is, okay, we don't have to all have completely gray hair to do this. What we need to do is honor who we are, because we all came here with a specific purpose. And if you don't believe that, then just sit with yourself and tune into what you know to be true. If you're still here, there's a reason you're still here. And once we all get rid of these expectations about you should do this, you should buy that, you should look like this is how you're supposed to act in this world. No, it's all crap. It's all garbage. It's all meant to disconnect you from who you are and the truth of your purpose here. If you can detangle from all of that, if you can be who you are and bring your true self into the world, I have this sense that we will be able to fix things. Women will be able, women standing in the power of who we really are, will be able to put the world back. It's been off kilter lately. Let's get it back, evolving in the way that it's meant to evolve going forward. So that is my the impetus for sharing the wisdom that does not come from me. But this idea of being who you really are, and going back to the topic of empty nesting and all of that, just one thing I want to say is, if you're feeling sadness about that sort of thing, it's okay. It's okay to mourn it. It's okay to be sad that part of your life is over.
Mhm.
So mourn it, write your younger self a love letter, take time to just really just absorb all of what you got from that part of your life, and then bless it and release it and let it go, because it's an energy drain if you keep thinking, oh, but that's when my life was great. That's what I came here to do. Yeah, that was one thing, but you're still here, so there's still more, right?
Mhm.
Bless it, release it, let it go, um, and take this opportunity when your kids are no longer so dependent on you. And you don't have to wait till they move out. I mean, as soon as they can, feed themselves and, they're not relying on you for every little thing. Take those opportunities, even then, when they're young tweens and young teens. As they become more independent, you can become more independent. So then it's not
Right.
such a big slap in the face when you drop them off at university, right? Or
Right.
college or
Right.
their first apartment. It's just like, okay, this is logical and this makes sense. And I'm going to go home and cry, just saying.
Mhm.
But, but, it's more of a slow evolution. So for women who are listening who have younger kids, um, just be conscious of all of that social programming on you to do things a certain way, and start at whatever age you are to be suspicious of that social programming, because it's not there for you,
Mhm.
right? Learn how to get back into and use your own intuition and your own embodied wisdom as a way to navigate life. And if
Mhm.
you find yourself at midlife now and you're listening in and you're like, what, I don't know what to do, the kids just, oh my gosh, they're leaving, what? It is an amazing opportunity. It's like walking into an empty room and you get to pick everything that goes into that new room. You get to pick the color on the walls and the window treatments and all the new furniture and like just all of it. It's really exciting. Um, as long as you have that mindset, you know that you're here for a reason, and
Yes.
let's make good use of it.
Beautiful. And this is why I love having a Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, because just hearing your story and being a witness for yourself and for others, how you can turn the emotional grief, trauma of empty nesting, or any kind of trauma, because it depends uh, how we integrate the trauma, right? And if
Mm.
we give it power to let it stay stuck, or we give it power to have movement so we can move forward. And like you said, if we're still here, that means there's still more,
Right.
right? And this is what we are here to experience, the more in motherhood. We're not just defined by motherhood, there's much more to that. And we are creators, right? We have a womb, we are
Yes.
creators, and we created a human. So there's more creations within us. So I would just like to share with the audience to go a little further to see what creations you can make for yourself with motherhood and mothering yourself, and then sharing that with the world, because that's what we really need.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yes. So before we close, is there any tips that you would like to share, um, how moms can deal with, maybe, because like you said, thinky, right? We can be in our head, as to, poor me, my kids are gone. Now I'm stuck at home. What do I do? Is there something that they can do on a daily basis that can kind of shift that?
Well, as I mentioned, I love journaling. Now, it's also something that I resented and would not do. So if someone's listening going, oh, if one more person tells me to journal, I'm going to roll in
Right.
the eyes, right?
Right. Right.
But I think the reason that I resisted it as long as I did is because I knew how powerful it would be. So
Mhm.
if if you're listening and you're like, I don't want to,
Mhm.
I strongly encourage you. And if you don't know what to write, sit down with your journal and just write into your journal, what would you have me know today?
Mm.
And it's amazing what comes out. And if you don't want to write with a pen and paper, then
Mhm.
get your phone out and talk to your phone.
Okay.
You can journal that way as well. And you might find, like me, that your wisdom comes through your voice.
Oh,
right? And so,
Interesting.
as we get into, we're no longer the mother of young children. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are thinking, yes, and I want to be a grandmother. Yes, as do I. And from that, after that, we move into the crone, right? Which is the holder of all the wisdom. And I don't think that there's a problem starting to be a crone now. Like, like, we don't have to wait until we're in the last legs. I'm going to revise that whole definition of crone. It's not the end stage. It's the, what
Not the instinct.
I call myself the crone in training. So I have a little bit of gray coming in here, I think. And so, as we learn and share, and we teach, we need to teach and connect and lift up others and tell the stories and all of that kind of thing. So do that. It's really important for women to be in community. So listen to podcasts like this one. Read books. Read fiction. People poo-poo fiction, and I'm telling you, fiction is a really powerful way not only to use your imagination. If you're like, oh, I'm not creative, yes, you are. Even if you never birthed a child, by the way, women are here to create. That's what we're here for. So whatever it is you're going to create it. And if you're feeling, as I said, like I'm not creative, read a book, because what happens in your brain when you're reading a fiction and you're imagining those worlds, that is going to kickstart your creativity. And you might think, oh, why don't we have this invention in our lifetime? And oh, why don't we have this service or whatever? Or, oh, I think I'm going to paint my room purple, right? Whatever. Fiction is an incredible way to kickstart your creativity. So that I would say journaling in some way, not getting caught on the hamster wheel of rumination. So if you're a thinker like I am, just let it go. Just let go of the thinking. And what I was going to say is find community, right? Women thrive in community, but not just anybody, right? We have to pick our community with care. And we need to make sure that the people that we are in community with will nurture us on our new pathway. Right? And they don't have to agree with everything that we say, of course, because we learn from people bringing perspectives. But we want to be in a community of women who are empowering in the sense of, oh, you're going to do that? Okay, how can I support you in that? Not like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, or why would you want to do that? Or, so find your community. And that is really valuable as well.
Oh, beautiful. I absolutely adore those words because it's true. Finding community is so important nowadays, right? To stay in alignment with finding who we are, and being amongst other women just gives us permission to be.
Yes, and support and mutual support.
Right, absolutely. So how can our audience find you online? How can they find your work?
Oh, thank you very much. If anyone's listening and would like some help getting in touch with their body, I actually have a free resource on my website. It's a well-being check-in, and it'll help you reconnect with your body as you work towards creating well-being in all aspects of your life. So you can go to lisapetty.com/check-in to pick that up. And there's a bunch of free resources there. I'm just naming that one. I have a Facebook group called Midlife Alchemy. You can join that for free as well. I am Dr. Lisa Petty on all the socials. That's Dr. Lisa Petty, part of my identity. There you go.
Right, own it.
Yes. And of course, I have coaching programs as well for women called Midlife Alchemy. So anyone who really feels like they would like some support moving from that sense of who am I now? What am I supposed to do? What's next for me? To having a really calm, grounded sense of who you are and what's next. Please reach out about that as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And what an honor to have your presence here. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience and your expertise with us today. And I'm hoping that anyone that is going through the midlife or the empty nesting, that they can apply some of the suggestions you did, so it can better their alignment with who they are as their own true mother.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having
Thank
me. It's been a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.